Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Peter Jenkins, and I'm a member of the IOSH Future Leaders Steering Group Committee. And it's a real pleasure for me to be able to be speaking with you today and to introduce this session. So what we're going to be going through for roughly the next hour or so is a wonderful Q&A opportunity with Josh Huggins of Principal People. We're going to predominantly cover three main topic areas. We're going to talk about CVs, personal branding, and then skills. So that'll be kind of technical and non-technical skills. At each of these three stages, we're going to be giving you the opportunities to just raise any questions that you have in the Q&A box. And at the very end of the session, we're going to go through a more specific kind of Q&A opportunity just for yourselves to ask any questions on these three topics, health and safety recruitment in general, or just something that you'd like to ask. So without further ado then, what I'd like to do now is introduce you to Josh Huggins, Director at Principal People, with over 11 years experience in health and safety recruitment. So Josh, thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd just like to give yourself a couple of minutes just to introduce yourself.
Yes, hi Peter, thank you very much. Very excited to be joining you all today to talk about really important topics in your career as you grow as future leaders within the health and safety profession. As Peter mentioned, I'm a director at Principal People and have been for the last 6 or 7 years. I've been with the organisation overall for nearly 11 years now, specialising within health and safety recruitment. So feel that my skills are well suited to be able to give you some advice and guidance on how you build your profile and brand within the market today. Delighted to be joined with Peter and to talk about a few interesting topics. Give you my perspective, of course. There's other perspectives out there, so I wouldn't say there's one size that fits all, but hopefully there's a few nuggets you can take away today with you to help improve you on your career journey. And of course, outside of this webinar, if anybody wants to connect with me or my team, please feel free to get in contact with us and we'll be happy to help.
Perfect, brilliant, and thank you so much, Josh. What we'll do as well is toward the end of the session, we'll give the opportunity for everyone to put their LinkedIn profiles in the chat if we'd like. I'll just give a prompt to the attendees to do so roughly around kind of toward the end of the session with about 5 minutes to go or so. So at this point, I'd like to also introduce you to another member of the Future Leaders Steering Group Committee that I'm joined by today, which is Ellis. And Ellis will be helping us out with the Q&A function, and I'll be asking her a few of the questions, ultimately just to raise some of those questions that you're asking throughout the session. So Ellis, if you'd just like to give yourself a bit of an introduction.
Yes, thanks, Peter. So my name's Ellis Fenwick. I'm currently a health, safety and environmental advisor for the Luminate Education Group. And like Peter, I am part of the IOSH Future Leaders Steering Committee as well. Lovely to virtually meet you all.
Brilliant, perfect. Thank you for that, Ellis. And finally, I'll just give a small introduction to myself then. So my name is Peter Jenkins. I'm a group health and safety manager at a company called DL Limited. I've been in health and safety now, since graduating from university in about 2015. So I started in a degree in environmental health, worked in the public sector. Decided the public sector wasn't really for me. Didn't really know what to do with myself after that. So fell into health and safety and hospitality in London. Stayed there for roughly about 6 months and then moved up north to move from hospitality into manufacturing. Started as a SHE advisor in manufacturing, went up to SHE manager within the same site, and then progressed from SHE manager into this group role within a different company after roughly about 3 years collectively in that same business. So it's been quite a whirlwind of growth from a personal point of view. And it's raised a lot of questions throughout my career to date on how do we make ourselves the best possible candidates going forwards? What can we do if we really want to accelerate our growth from coming into health and safety in the first place, but then moving from advisor to manager, and potentially even then manager into group manager? So this opportunity with the Future Leaders Group has given us the chances to ask you already to say, what is it that you'd like to know with these type of things? Or how would you like to progress yourself? Or what information are you really crying out for that can potentially help you out with your journey? And as I say, this brought us to these three topic areas: CVs, personal branding, and skills. So without further ado then, Josh, what I'm going to do is jump straight into these questions then. And the first one's going to be about CVs. So many recruiters want to see specific hard skills on CVs, but employers want to see your soft skills and your value-added skills in a way that demonstrates your capability. How can you present your CV in a manner that meets the requirements of the recruiter putting you forwards, but stands out when it hits the desk of the hiring manager? And are there any differences in what students or potentially those with lesser technical experiences can do to stand out as first choice candidates?
So yes, great question, Peter. And I think to start with, the thing that I want everybody to think about today is actually the purpose of a CV. It's probably one of the most commonly asked questions of us as recruiters around the CV and how it should look and the format and the layout. And we have templates that we recommend people follow that happy to share to any of the listeners today if they want to get in contact with me. But if you think about the purpose of the CV is to gain you an interview, to gain you an opportunity to discuss the opportunity with the end company. It's not to secure you the position. And I think sometimes people get very focused on trying to include everything in their CV that could be needed by the hiring manager or the recruiter for the role, rather than thinking, if I can highlight the key things that are of interest and not worry about the rest, that might be enough to get me through the door. And then when I'm through the door and the meeting with either the recruiter or the hiring manager, I can showcase my personality, my tenacity to be successful in this role. And that's what can really make me successful. So I think that's an important thing for everybody to take away. The purpose of the CV is to secure you an interview or a discussion. Most hiring managers or recruiters are making a decision on a CV within a couple of minutes maximum, especially in the current climate, post-COVID, with people looking to move more frequently. It may well be that we have opportunities where we have 300 to 400 applications for one role. And if you think around the amount of positions that we could be recruiting for at any one time, I think at the moment we have over 150 positions within Principal People that we're recruiting for. To prioritize each role and to give it the time that we need to, looking through those CVs becomes quite a task that has to be done fairly quickly. So if people are making a decision on a CV within a couple of minutes, then you need to think about what's going to stand out and what's going to make you look suitable enough to have a discussion and not bore the recruiter or the hiring manager with a huge intro into your complete personal circumstance that they may not be interested in hearing, quite honestly. So I think the key thing for us, and the thing that lets a lot of candidates down, is focusing on key achievements. Key achievements are a tangible way you can demonstrate what you've been able to deliver so far in your career to date. And on a CV, that's probably the closest thing to comfort you can give to an organization around how you will then be able to deliver within their organization. And when I talk about key achievements, an important thing to remember is to be tangible with this key achievement. It's not enough to say that you were part of a team that implemented a management system, because, well, so what is the question that you have back. What did that management system deliver for the business that showed the value that you can add? So we recommend using tangible key achievements, thinking about percentages of increases or decreases, which you're then able to back up and explain at interview. So don't fabricate anything. It's really important to make sure that you're truthful in your CV, because anything that's on your CV is likely to be questioned at interview. But if you can showcase the tangible benefits that you've been able to deliver on your CV very clearly, then I think that's a really great place to start.
Sorry, I can just jump in just for a quick second on that. When you've got people who are describing their achievements as part of it, we hear that people will use the acronym STAR quite a bit. So situation, task, I can't remember what the A is.
Action.
Action, that's it. So situation, task, action, results, and then reflection. To effectively kind of say, what did you learn from it? And I appreciate that when there's some people that are first kind of getting into health and safety, that it's quite difficult to be able to articulate the key performance indicators and what it is that they've actually done from a pure numbers point of view. So would you say that for those who are just starting out, or perhaps students coming in, that they should write about what outcomes were achieved as part of it, if they can't perhaps put the exact numbers in?
For sure. I mean, the outcomes that achieved are great. And also, if you're in the early stages of your career, organizations aren't expecting you to have been the individual that's led this strategy or program. So it's absolutely fine to say that you were part of a team that delivered that. Once you get to more senior positions, of course, organizations are going to want to see leadership and the accountability that you took. But if you're at a more junior stage in your career, it's absolutely fine to say that you're part of the team that's delivered that. And again, if you're not sure about it, then go back to your business and research what happened. And I suppose that's the mindset that you should be thinking about anyway. The best health and safety individuals that I engage with at my executive search level all the way through our business are those that are able to understand how their actions impact their business in a positive way. We're not just putting rules in for rules' sake. We're not the health and safety police. What we're trying to do is facilitate businesses to work in their most effective and efficient way, but in the safest way possible. And I think that if you can remember that and you can draw that line back into your CV, you're going to be able to be much more impactful. Brilliant. You did mention, Peter, about soft skills, though, and I think it's an important thing to mention this, because your soft skills can be shown through key achievements, especially if it's around challenging situations that you've been in, difficult stakeholders, adversity that you've been able to overcome. That does give you an understanding of soft skills, or an individual that's reading a CV, an understanding of soft skills. But again, the soft skills are really going to come at the interview stage. So don't go over the top with your soft skills. Showcase them through the examples and the achievements that you talk about. And then at interview, you can back that up through your personality and style.
Brilliant. And just kind of thinking about then, I appreciate that you'd said that it will only take a couple of minutes for a hiring manager to make a decision on a CV when it comes across their desk. When you're speaking with hiring managers, are they looking out for a certain structure for the way that people are describing their achievements? So, for example, I've seen some people on the CVs will start with a doing word for like every bullet point. So they'll say facilitated, coordinated, led, communicated, championed. And is that sort of a format that you'd recommend for people when they're writing out their achievements, to just help give that clear understanding as to what it is they've actually done?
I think it's really difficult with the CV because there isn't a one size that fits all. And if that's how you feel that you can best describe the achievements that you've created, then go for it. The thing that I would say as a kind of hard and fast rule is you must have key achievements, and they must be tangible to showcase what you've been able to deliver, and it be quantitative. How you show that is something that I think can be down to the personal discretion. We have templates that we recommend, and the way that we recommend to show your key achievements is in two ways. One is to have a key achievement section fairly high up on your CV on the first page, because that's what people will read first. And you can showcase the impact that you've had in different roles through your career. Or alternatively, on each of your roles, having your key achievements listed first before you go into the duties. I see lots of CVs that just list their duties, and essentially it's like reading a job description. And the thing that I countlessly speaking to candidates about is, what do you think makes you look different to an individual who's doing the same role that you are at a competitor manufacturing organization, to take your industry as an example? If you're just writing out what your job description says, because every health and safety advisor, every health and safety officer should be doing those things. So I think the hiring managers understand that. It's what have you done that's above and beyond that really shows you and your skill set and personality out to be the right candidate for the job. So that's what I would say.
Brilliant. And I appreciate there'll be some people that are listening to this that are quite early on in their careers that haven't perhaps had a lot of experience in health and safety specifically, but they might have, for example, worked in hospitality as waiters, waitresses, or even done something like a paper round type of thing. How would you suggest those people write out their achievements, or effectively things that they can bring to a role perhaps within their CV?
I think it goes back to that point around being somebody who's a positive impact on the organization that you work for. If you don't have the skills, if you don't have the experience of working in health and safety, then you can't make it up. That's who you are. But what you can show is those transferable skills that will stand you in good stead for when you make that transition into a health and safety position, or if you've not got much experience, into a more senior role. So to take your point, if you're talking about a paper round, well, did you improve the efficiency of the paper round? Were you able to engage with the shop owner to think about new ways of running the paper round that made not only your round more efficient, but those of others? Health and safety is about getting people on board with an idea and making it their idea so that they buy into it and that they really believe it. So any job that you do, you should be able to demonstrate that. And if you can take those achievements, put them and show them as transferable skills, then I think that that's when you're on to a winner. And those basic skills of tenacity, enthusiasm, engagement are going to happen in any role that you are. Paper rounds, a waiter or a waitress, a hairdresser. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Those skills will be able to shine through. So I think focus on those. But again, don't go into too much depth and detail, because you want enough that somebody wants to find out more. And that's why they're going to pick up the phone and call you.
Yeah, perfect. Brilliant. I really like that about just leaving them wanting more from that side. Ellis, at this point, have we got any questions that have come through from the Q&A that we can jump into around this question?
Yes, we've got a couple that have come through. One relates specifically to what you were just talking about. So Tina would like to know, what would you class as a key achievement? So I know you touched on that briefly, Josh.
Yeah, so yeah, good question. I think that, as I said before, it has to be something tangible that you have been part of or implemented yourself that's delivered a business improvement to the organization that you work for. So if we take an example of a good CV that I was looking at earlier this week, it was a junior individual. They were part of a steering group that implemented a behavioral and cultural program into their organization. And they were specifically responsible for some of the marketing campaigns and video work that this organization was doing. So they were creating short videos that they were putting out to the organization, and this person had the responsibility for that. So it's great to showcase the wider achievement that the whole department took on. So as part of the safety function, as an example, who created a behavioral cultural program, I was responsible for creating the media content that enabled us to improve culture. And this resulted in, and I think this is the part where you make it tangible, this resulted in a 25%, 30% increase in near-miss reporting and a 15% reduction in incidents and injuries measured over a 2-year period. So you're showing what you did, you're showing how it's part of the bigger picture, you're showing the tangible result of that, but it's clear and concise and you're not waffling too much.
Perfect. I think that's what you said there about when it's finished as well, being able to articulate what the overall results have been. Absolutely brilliant. I do get that there'll be a few people that are kind of partway through delivering their outcomes as well, but I think it's probably fair to say that they can give an indicative result through that achievement as well, to say that 6 months in they're seeing X amount engagement, or they're seeing this type of reduction in accidents. Even though it's not the finished piece, it's still progression.
Yes, and the leading indicators should be there. You should be able to track and see the leading indicators on that journey. So even if it's not the huge increase right now, we'll still talk about it because you're on the journey. And health and safety is about continuous improvement. You've never reached that pinnacle, so it doesn't matter if you're 6 months in or 2 years in. Where you are is where you are, and focus on ensuring that you can demonstrate that. But there's a lot of personal accolades that future leaders have that we see. I know that there's groups such as, when people are awarded a space in the 30 under 30 for something, or they've been chosen as part of the high potential group as management or succession within their organization. They've been part of a shadow board. All these things that showcase you've been selected amongst your peers because of something that you've been able to demonstrate gives the hiring manager confidence that you are what is known in the industry as a high value candidate, a high performing individual, a future leader to the name of this group. So any of those I think are great to showcase in your CV and really demonstrate what it is that you're able to do.
Perfect, brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Josh. Alice, do we have any other questions that have come up as well?
We've just got a couple more.
Go for it.
I would like to know what would be good transferable skills for a HSSE professional.
So I think I mentioned a few earlier. The ability, I think about what are the good outcomes of your role as an HSSE professional, and what do you think that your organization want from a soft skill perspective? So we spoke about being able to deal with stakeholders and collaborating with other departments, perhaps creating process improvements and efficiencies, improving behavioural and cultural views of things. So all of these softer skills are things that will relate to anything that you've done previously, or should relate to anything you've done previously. So how can you draw on those to be able to deal with that? I think overcoming adversity as well. As a health and safety individual, you may spend a lot of time putting together plans for new processes or equipment that you want, and it can be quite costly. And some businesses might make the decision that on the kind of with a risk review, it's not worth it right now. So how do you dust yourself back down, think about how it's been positioned, take it as a positive, not a negative, and in 6 months' time, try it again with some tweaks to be effective. So if you've overcome adversity in your career before being in health and safety, you've tried something, it hasn't worked, you've changed it to make it work, talk about that, because they're the types of resilient skills that people are looking for.
Perfect. I think that resilience piece has been so important for so many health and safety professionals over the last year and a half. With, I'm going to say the C word here, but with COVID, it's been such an important transferable skill to really champion and explain how not only we've been resilient as professionals, but how we perhaps inspired that resilience in others as well. Alice, I'm conscious of time, but if we can take one more question from this, and then we'll move on to the next sort of topic around personal branding.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got one from Jay that says, what are your thoughts on video CVs?
Well, that's a good question, especially in such a digital age today. We've got TikTok, YouTube, short form videos are huge. So Josh, I'm really interested to hear what you think about video CVs, or something a little bit different perhaps that we want to get across to a hiring manager.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you raised it, Jay. Video CVs and video introductions are definitely the future and the way forward. The CV as a concept is something that's been around for a very long time, and there's been nothing else that's been able to capture an individual's background and skill set and take it forward as we've moved into the technological age. But video interviewing and video profiles are definitely the way forward. LinkedIn is starting to do it now, so I don't know whether any of you have seen, but on your LinkedIn profile, instead of your profile picture now, you can do it. You can have a video that introduces yourself and who you are. Little things like that are such a great way to engage with people, show who you are, and move away from this two-dimensional piece of paper that doesn't really say much about you to something that can showcase your personality and your style. And in health and safety, personality and your approach is probably as important, if not more important, than the technical skills that you have. There's a lot of technical skills and courses that you can go on, but you can't really change your behavior or approach too much without a lot of coaching and support. So if you've naturally got it and you're gifted to engage with people, then you really want to showcase that, because that should be the step that you need in your career that can get you through the door. At Principal People, we started to utilize video interview software. We tried it about 5 years ago, but it was to be honest with you, it was a bit too early. Clients didn't like it. They thought it was a bit of a waste of time. They didn't get it. We fast forward to the last 18 months, and it's something that all of our clients are looking for. So we have a platform that we utilize that allows candidates to answer specific questions that the client creates, and are able to articulate themselves. It's a 2-minute answer, so you can be clear and concise, but it showcases your personality. And actually, it's been such a great piece. We've had so much feedback from clients and candidates alike that it's allowed candidates to feel more confident that they've been able to portray themselves in the best way to a client. And it's allowed the client to focus on the people that they realize will make a good cultural fit, and spend more time with them at interview, and perhaps no time or less time with people perhaps that they don't think would be suitable. And we can give that feedback to them. So I think if that's built into a process you're applying for, then it should be great news, because you can utilize that to your advantage. But if it's not, can you do something yourself? Absolutely. Smartphones, and most people have smartphones now. They've great cameras, great videos. What's to stop you finding out who the hiring manager is, recording a 30-second video of yourself and why you're interested in the role, and sending that alongside your CV to a hiring manager? That's definitely going to stand out amongst others. So just think about what you can do yourself proactively, because I think it's a great thing. I think it's important that Jay's raised it, and absolutely it's something that I think everybody should be thinking about as we move into out of COVID, but definitely more with technology.
Oh, absolutely, and I think you've hit some really pertinent points on there around, I'm not going to say it's the death of a traditional CV here, but we're really moving from a CV into personal branding. And how can we showcase ourselves as professionals, as individuals, in the best possible way? So thinking about then how that personal branding is just becoming so much more important for candidates to put themselves forward as first choice candidates. What's the most impactful or positive ways that a candidate can articulate their personality through personal branding to support their applications?
So I think the first thing to say about personal branding, and the important thing to make, is it's my personal opinion, and this is a personal opinion, but your personal brand is probably more important than a CV. As I said before, the CV's purpose is to get you in front of an organization for a discussion. But if you think back to perhaps your own career, Peter, actually, has your personal brand been the thing that's got you in front of in front of some people and some organizations? It may well be. So your personal brand is such a crucial part of who you are, and essentially how you're going to be able to progress and develop in your career. So I think people perhaps haven't spent as much time thinking about their personal brand, thinking about their LinkedIn, thinking about their social media presence, both professional and personal, and the impact that can have on them and their career. So I think social media has transformed the ways that we can showcase our personal brand. And I know it doesn't come naturally to everybody to be, putting videos up on LinkedIn, but we speak to our team about it because it's such a great way to engage with our audience. And there's some that love it and some that absolutely hate it. But having some presence on social media certainly is important. And then the other part of your personal brand is how you engage and network with the health and safety and wider communities in and out of work to build who you are and people's perception of who you are. And that's a really important thing to consider. So yeah, I think personal brand is something I'm really passionate about and really want to get into with you, because I think that there's a lot to talk about and a lot of people can learn.
Well, I was going to say that's a great point, and just really kind of on that bit that people can learn. I'm keen, Alice, to open the floor up to a few questions from people, because I'm sure that this has probably prompted quite a few questions coming through. Are there any questions that have really hit the top of the pile that we can talk through on this?
None at the moment. We've still got a few coming through about CVs and things like that.
Oh, right, okay.
So I didn't know whether you wanted to run through one of the questions you've maybe prepared, Peter.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do is that we're thinking about those questions that have come through from CVs. We'll just keep some of those toward the end of the session, because we want to dive into this bit on personal branding. So thinking about the way that LinkedIn's used at the moment, Josh, I appreciate that you talked through a couple of different bits and pieces for how people can use it, with banners, with the videos in their personal profile pictures, that recruiters are kind of looking out for what people are liking and what people are posting. Yeah. But is there anything that you can share with us, or any links that you have that you'd be able to share after this that people can go to learn how to build their LinkedIn profile to really bolster that personal brand through it?
Yes, so there's a number of very easy to follow guides of building your brand on LinkedIn that I can share with to the LinkedIn group or to the audience today. And there's also individuals that I know, some probably a part of the Future Leaders group within IOSH or other parts of IOSH, or that are within the health and safety community, that are very good at pushing their own personal brand on social media. And I'll speak to a few of those, and if they're happy for me to share their profile, then I'll share them so that people can have a look at them for sure.
I do think that'd be really useful. And I think if we could put that on the IOSH Future Leaders LinkedIn group, actually, that's a pretty good place for it, to be fair, thinking about it. That'd be really good. So I appreciate that a lot, John.
For sure.
There is one thing that people had spoken to me a little bit about before, and it's something called celebration anxiety. And without wanting to, I suppose, really, I'm trying to think the most tactful way of saying this, but basically people don't necessarily know how to articulate their successes online without coming across as perhaps a bit arrogant or a bit egotistical, or basically saying, hey, look at me, I'm absolutely brilliant at health and safety, so that it takes away from the actual health and safety element. Do you have any advice for people who want to share their successes on LinkedIn or social media, but don't necessarily want to come across as being a bit of a,
Yes, understand what you're saying, and I think we've all seen, you know, the posts that the humble brags. I think they're
Yeah,
classified
that's
as.
it. That's it. Yes.
But you know, the humble brag is ultimately what you're doing at an interview stage. You really have to showcase who you are and who you are and what you've been able to achieve. Because otherwise, if you don't tell anybody, nobody is going to know. And that is what branding is. Branding and marketing is about showing the best parts of you. And maybe there will be you'll be on a journey and you're not the finished article. But if you don't celebrate it, then you've got to hope somebody else does for you. And that's probably not the best way to look after your own career. So I think it's difficult for some people, and I completely understand that. But I think what I would recommend doing, and we've certainly done this internally with our own staff, is, you know, if you are more of a shy, reserved person and find it really difficult to publish positive things about yourself, well, then why not actually talk about that vulnerability? People like to hear about people, you know, the vulnerability that people are going through and how they've tried to overcome that challenge. So it's okay to say, no, I really, you know, this isn't natural for me. This isn't something I've ever done before, but I feel so proud of myself and I want to share, because I think it's celebrating the success of the industry as well, that I've been able to achieve this. So I think that try not to let your anxiety around it, of the humble brag, get in the way. It's an important part of it. I think it showcases and shines a great light on the health and safety industry. And I think I'd go back to the point, if you don't do it for yourself, who else is going to do it for you? And if you want to progress and develop in your career, I think it's an important thing to do. Now, we've all seen the picture of the picture of a certificate that somebody's achieved. And I think that they're great. And, you know, I try to like and comment on as many of those as possible, because, you know, I know how much time and effort goes into them, but they are quite repetitive and they can be the same thing. So what about doing a video post to talk about it? What about saying something slightly different, doing a slightly different picture that just stands out a little bit from the crowd? So I think, don't just follow what everybody else has done. You can do different things. But I think showcasing it on your profile is important. And if all of that, you don't want to do a public post, then at least make sure it's in your certifications and awards at the bottom of your LinkedIn profile, because recruiters do and hiring managers do look down to that. And sometimes when we're doing searches, you may see someone with a particular skill set, but you don't know their qualifications. So if you can put it on there, I think it showcases it. But I wouldn't put every single one. I'd put the most important ones up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've touched on a really good point there on authenticity, and actually just being authentic through what you post, how you post it, and what you actually say about yourself. There was a conversation I'd actually had with Jay, who asked one of the earlier questions around authentic leadership and being authentic. And we were discussing about how some professionals will define themselves by certain characteristics. So you'll get people say, well, as a young professional, or as someone working in this particular field, or as this, that, they'll qualify what they say. Do you find that that's a bit of a pitfall that some people will go into, where they kind of shoot themselves a bit in the foot by saying that they're a young professional, rather than saying that they are perhaps just a professional in this basis?
I think that you have to be authentic, and you have to be realistic in reading the room and understanding who you're engaging with, and how you fit within that discussion. But I think putting barriers around yourself by classifying yourself that somebody may not have classified you as, could sometimes put it in not as positive a light as perhaps it had been. So yeah. I don't think it's worth precursoring anything by kind of predefining yourself. And I know it probably sounds a bit counterintuitive, because we have this future leaders group, but this is an internal group that we're talking about to the community. So we're talking to the external community. You may well be a future leader, but you are a health and safety professional. You are a change agent. You are somebody who is on that journey. And whether you need to define yourself perhaps isn't so important. I think what perhaps can be more important is the sorts of things that you get involved within. So who are you following on LinkedIn? That's something that I look at when I'm looking at individuals. Who do they follow and what are their interests? What do you actually comment on? Quite at the top of LinkedIn, you can see people's recent activity, and it's quite interesting if you click onto that to see more, and you look through the last 10 comments or posts that somebody's made, or likes that they've done. Well, what does that showcase? Is that showcases someone who's a really positive person who celebrates others' success, or is it someone that's only posting about themselves? Is it someone that's posting on something that's got to do a political undertone that might land you in hot water, or something that's around the about society that perhaps you may share in your private life and your personal in your private life, but do you need to share that on a public forum? And also to be mindful of things like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, other places where you may be easily identifiable. And what you're saying on those platforms is looked at. As recruiters, we look at that for prospective candidates. And I think you're naive if you think that, well, that's my personal space, that can't be looked at. Well, you're putting it out in a public forum, so it will be. And you need to be very mindful of what you do. And I think that there is some rigor around social media and the protection that social media companies need to give. But ultimately, if you're putting information out there that could be to the detriment of your career, you need to think twice about it. So stay away from Facebook perhaps at midnight on a Saturday night after a few drinks.
That's it. So we're saying just watch what you like. That's basically it. That fair enough. Brilliant. Ellis, I appreciate that we've probably had a couple more questions that come through. So what I'm thinking is if we work through some of these questions and kind of jump into a bit more of a Q&A type of thing now. And as we work through the questions, we'll try and talk a little bit about some of the skills, or technical or non-technical skills, that might be beneficial for prospective candidates through the questions. So if you want to just fire away, Alice, what are some of the questions that we've had come through?
Yeah, absolutely. So relating to what you were just talking about, Josh, Vicky would like to know, are there any common pitfalls with personal branding? So I know you just mentioned social media, things like that, personal views. Is there anything else where people often fall down?
Well, I think the thing that people sometimes forget is your current job and how you behave and act and perform in your current role is an extension of your personal brand. So it's not just about your online presence, it's about what you're doing in real life. And I know social media can create this sort of distorted world where you have this sort of online reality and then the online perspective and then a reality in person. But how do you engage with individuals within your current organization? You never know who may be in an organization that you're going to be interviewing for, who worked with you previously, that was in a separate department, but heard about the great things you did, or perhaps some of those not so good things that you did. So personal branding isn't just about online presence, it can be that. And I think that's true. And the integrity that you show when you leave an organization, the integrity that you show if you go through an interview process and you're not interested in it anymore. How do you behave? Do you just not communicate with the recruiter or the hiring manager and not turn up? Or do you call them to explain the reasons why and offer your sincere apologies? All of those things leave a lasting trace, I suppose, on who you are. And it's something that as recruiters and when I speak with our clients, we know about. And there are individuals out there that when you speak to a client, they say, actually, we've heard about this individual from somebody within the business, and unfortunately, based upon that feedback, we're not going to progress them. And that's something that's happening behind your back without you knowing about it, but it's determining your career. So you have to be mindful that what you're doing in your day-to-day job will impact you in the future, and be mindful of that.
Well, I think it's fair to say, Josh, that if there's anything that LinkedIn's taught me, it's that the 6 degrees of separation is actually pretty much more like 1 or 2 people, especially within health and safety, and even more so within health and safety in certain sectors as well. So that's a really, really good point in understanding that what you put on social media, what you put on LinkedIn, how you've acted in your job before, realistically, you're only 1 or 2 people away from finding that out, really. So
for sure.
Definitely a good thing to be mindful of. What other questions have you had come through, Alex?
So we've had another one from Ashley, who says that she has a LinkedIn page. She doesn't use it much. She's not really looking for a new job, but she would like to expand her network within the health and safety community. How would you recommend engaging without looking like she's looking for a new position?
This is a common question we have, actually, and so I'm glad it's been asked. Because you're engaging on LinkedIn and because you're publishing things about what you're doing, it doesn't mean you're looking for a new job. And I think candidates think that LinkedIn is purely for job hunting. LinkedIn is a business networking site, and that's what it's for. It's for engaging, it's for communicating, building a community, a network. So I think that it's pretty clear if you've got open to opportunities as the banner on your LinkedIn profile, what you're on there for. But if you're not doing that and you're not talking about a job, so you're not applying for jobs and you're not commenting to say I'm interested in this opportunity, then it's not going to look like that. What it will look like is that you're someone who takes your career seriously. You want to learn from others in the community, and you want to be part of something which is, the safety community is a brilliant community to be part of. And actually, to get involved in that, I think LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn and you're not in some of these networking groups that come outside of LinkedIn, then you're actually missing out. So I suppose my advice would be, jump straight in. And if you want to have a conversation offline away from this about potential people to follow or groups to look at, happy to have a call and to kind of advise.
That's very kind of you, Josh. Thank you. I know that when I was first starting out in LinkedIn, I was really worried about the exact same thing, that people would see me liking recruiters or following recruiters and thinking, oh my God, Pete's going to jump ship. Oh no, what are we going to do? But realistically, dropping them a quick message when you can add a message when you connect with someone. And literally for the vast majority of people, I just introduce myself as, hi, I'm Pete. I'm really interested in expanding my network, and I look forward to seeing and learning from your posts and insights in the future. Please let me know if there's anything I can help with in the meantime. And to be honest with you, that just sets the expectations. In the same way that you are just really, you're meeting people at a conference face to face, you kind of give them a business card. It's the exact same thing. No one will look at you any differently for just doing it in a digital way compared to if you're doing it in a conference. So yeah, but really good offer that, Josh, and thank you so much for it.
No
Alex, what else have we had come through?
Okay, so someone's just popped up and asked if they're at a disadvantage by not being on LinkedIn. What advice do you have for someone who doesn't like or really struggles with social media?
Great question.
Yeah, and of course, this is something that's becoming more prevalent with the rise of social media, that people really want to stay away from it. I mean, I would say you can, of course, network with it without social media. I think it does make your life a lot harder, to be honest. And you can use social media, and there's ways to use it in a way that's safe and doesn't consume you in terms of notifications. Turning those off. I don't have my push notifications on LinkedIn or any social media because I don't want to see it if I'm not looking at it. When I'm looking at it, it's when I want to engage with it. So you can modify it in a way that perhaps some people who are kind of perhaps standing on the outside looking at it can become nervous or scared about using it. It doesn't need to consume you. If you use it for the benefit of you and you understand what you're trying to get out of it, that's the best way to use social media. If you're trying to please the audience that you've created every single day by posting content and information, that's when it can become exhausting. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend doing that. But if you definitely want to avoid LinkedIn completely or social media at all, then it's about networking groups. The difficulty is most networking groups are facilitated through LinkedIn now, and especially with COVID and the online world, it becomes quite difficult. But I'm sure as we transition out, the IOSH branch groups will be happening more in person, and I would recommend sort of looking online to IOSH's website to have a look at the different groups that there could be that you could get involved in. Obviously, this group as well. But yeah, I think it's inevitable, with social media and how we're going, that lots of the networking opportunities will come through LinkedIn and other platforms like that, fortunately.
No, absolutely. And it's a really good point there just about the branches and the subgroups and the committee groups as well. Literally today, I had my IOSH, I haven't actually taken it out of the package yet, but I got my IOSH magazine come through, and there's still some really good references in there for groups that you can join and for people that you can just sort of link up with. Quite a few people have got their own websites, their own company websites as well, that they'll put through this. And it's just a really good opportunity then just to pick up the phone and have a chat with them and see what you can do that way. I appreciate there's also some conferences coming up, and like we were just saying just then, if you're not too keen on LinkedIn, keep an eye out for post-COVID conferences and try and get to a few of those as well, just to get that face-to-face interaction and build up those networks. But I do think, I agree with you, Josh, I do think that it will be quite inevitable that we'll end up really pursuing this more digital mindset and digital kind of engagement and networking.
For sure.
Oh, perfect. So Alice, I'm going to default to you basically just keep firing them out as we're coming through.
Okie doke. So Nicole wants to know, what are the best hashtags to follow on LinkedIn?
Ooh.
That's a good question, and I'm probably not that up to date with what hashtags you should do. I mean, when we do posts on LinkedIn, we're hashtagging safety, we're hashtagging IOSH, we're hashtagging health and safety, sustainability. but just, I think, trial and error, you know, have a search, see what you like, see what comes up with, look at people that you admire in the industry and what are they following, what hashtags do they post with. I think hashtags on LinkedIn perhaps have less impact as they do on something like Twitter, but what does have good impact on LinkedIn is, you know, following particular people and the groups as well. So just play around with it and have a look at it. You're not committing to anything, but you can follow people and look and see what they're posting and replicate that.
John, I think that's a great point. I've really struggled with hashtags on LinkedIn. It might be because I've never really used Twitter much either, where I appreciate there's a bit more of a kind of focus on hashtags. But as you say, Josh, for me, following people and really looking through the comments as well and thinking, hey, I like that, I like what that person's saying. And then following that specific individual. For those people who are saying about, oh, you know, do I need to connect with people? Do I have to actually build my network that way? Well, you don't have to connect with everyone if you want to just keep up with what they're saying. You can just follow them as part of it as well. And it'll give you their updates, but then you're not necessarily seeing that you are connecting with everyone. So do consider as well following people as well as connecting with people and pursuing hashtags that way. So, excuse me, I was going to quickly clear my throat. Sorry. At least jump in with another question. Sorry, apologies.
No problem. Terry wants to know, would you put your CV onto your LinkedIn profile?
I think it depends on your circumstance. If you're actively seeking a new opportunity, then absolutely. And I would go one further. And as I said about with the profile video, you can introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Josh Huggins. You know, I'm looking for a new opportunity within health and safety. I live here, and this is the type of opportunity I'll be interested in. There's a link to my CV in my LinkedIn profile. Please get in contact. It's more impactful than just having your CV there. But obviously, if you're employed and your current company isn't aware that you're looking, then I wouldn't say it's the most positive thing to do. And some people do it, and you know, I'm not sure how it goes down with their companies, but I do see it on there. But I think I wouldn't recommend it for sure.
Okay, thank you. And just linking back to CVs then, what are the major things, sections or mistakes to be avoided when preparing a CV?
I think making the mindset of you only have one chance to make a good first impression. So spell check. I know it sounds simple, but you know, spell check your CV, because we see so many grammatical errors on CVs. Is your CV actually the most up-to-date CV? There's a lot of times we'll call candidates and the position that's on the CV isn't the most up-to-date position they're in. If that CV, if you're not doing a video, if that CV is the most important thing to get you in front of a company and you haven't bothered to update it to your current position, then how serious are you taking the job market, or how serious is somebody going to take you as a prospective employee within their organization? So I think making sure you proofread, you make sure it's up to date, and yeah, as I say, you only get one chance to make a good first impression, and that really is true with the CV. So that would be what I would recommend. The specifics of it, as I said, key achievements is the only thing that I would recommend you absolutely have in, but I don't know about you, Peter.
Thinking about those achievements and thinking about the way that people have structured their CVs with skills, is there if I can ask, is there like a ratio of what hiring managers are looking for in terms of behavioural skills versus technical skills, so that people might want to prioritise those differently on their LinkedIn profiles, branding, or CVs?
Yeah, so I mean, technical skills is very difficult because there's so many different technical skills across a whole range of industries, and you may have experience in a coma site, but actually the role that you're going for doesn't require that skill set. So is that really that interesting to the client? It may well be, it may not be. You don't really know. So I think highlighting the key technical skills is of course important, but that should show from some of those key achievements that you are able to demonstrate. The ability to have those softer skills and showcase them is what clients are going to be looking for at an interview stage. So as long as you satisfy the role requirements and looking at the job description and showcase, the essential skills and experience, do I have those? Are they clear on the CV? I think that's enough to tick that box. The softer skills listing, I'm collaborative, I'm engaging, I'm whatever it may be, I always think is a little bit weak, because everyone can say that, but how do you demonstrate that? It's better to demonstrate it through your key achievement to showcase what you've done to overcome it. So listing your key behavioral competencies on a CV, isn't something that I'm that much of an advocate for. However, when we were coming out of COVID, we surveyed a range of health and safety leaders and asked them to determine what was more important to them, behavioural skills or soft skills. And it was over 2/3 came back that behavioural competence was better for them than the technical competence. And in executive level roles and through our executive search division, when we talk to clients, we see that up to over 4/5 of executives are looking for executive leaders of health and safety better with softer skills than the technical skills, generally because the technical skills can come within the team. So most people will understand that they're looking for those softer skills, but just listing them perhaps isn't the best way. It's about getting in front of them, it's about demonstrating them. And I'll go back to it, but what better way than to introduce yourself with a video, because I think that really highlights your personality.
Absolutely. What I appreciate that at the start we were kind of talking about the attendees being at various different stages of their careers type of thing, but to hear that between 2/3 and 80% worth of hiring managers want to see candidates articulating those behavioural competencies, the coaching, adaptability, flexibility to change, overcoming adversity, empowering others to deliver on positive outcomes. That sounds really key, really key. So I'm sure that if there's a few people listening at the moment that are thinking, oh, how can I actually articulate this? What can I do for it? If you've got any examples, Josh, of good LinkedIn profiles where people are really doing a great job of articulating these behavioural competencies, we'd love to see it shared on the IOSH Future Leaders group. That'd be fantastic, just to really help us out with that.
Yeah, certainly. I'll have a look at it. But I think it's not only just about being able to showcase them on the CV, but it's about actually working on them. And that might be within your organization, but that might also be outside of your organization. We created, and I didn't talk about it in my introduction at the start, but I suppose one of the reasons for doing webinars like this is I'm also a founding trustee of a charity called Safety for Good that some of you may have heard of. And Safety for Good was developed in conjunction with a number of executive leaders and IOSH to I suppose shine a positive profile on the health and safety profession, which we do through various webinars and other things to raise the profile and raise the competence of individuals within it. And we've developed through Safety for Good a specific Future Leaders mentoring program. That's an application-based program where you have direct access to an executive leader within the health and safety community. I know IOSH have their own mentoring program as well that I'd recommend. So focusing on a mentoring program can be really useful to you as part of your development in your career, and especially if that's focusing on your softer skills, because ultimately you can be a fly on the wall and hear from people that are in those boardrooms, understanding what's happening. And it's extremely insightful to get that early on in your career, because it can help you adapt and change your mindset rather than just purely focusing on technical. And I don't want to undermine the technical competence. It's needed, it is there, but it's almost sort of a tick box that you have that, and then it's about the behavioural competence to get you to the further stages. And mentoring is a great way to do that. So I think work on it, and if you don't practice and train it, it won't be something that you become good at, because you need to work on it.
Absolutely, and I'm sure that we'll be getting a link put in the chat just for the IOSH mentoring scheme as well. So I'm very conscious we've got 5 minutes left. So what I'm thinking, Ellis, is if we can spend just a couple of minutes, just give us some quick fire questions. And I think, Josh, if you can try and give some soundbite answers. I get they're not going to be the most in-depth, but if we just try and work through some of these questions for the last couple of minutes before we close up. So go for it, Ellis. Let's go for some.
Okay. So John would like to know, how is best to introduce yourself on LinkedIn to a potential employer?
I assume this means that you're going to be direct messaging them. I think a direct message through LinkedIn is great, but can you pull off their LinkedIn profile, their email address, send them a direct email instead? I think it has more impact. And as I said before, I think you try to utilize video. If you can't utilize video, make it unique, and share something about yourself that you think nobody else can showcase.
Absolutely. I've got another one. I'm just going to paraphrase it slightly, but essentially somebody's asking, what is a good amount to be posting on LinkedIn? Obviously they're wanting quantity or quality, you've got that sort of divide there. So what would you say is a good amount to be posting?
For sure. Quality is of course most important, but consistency does mean that your following will grow. So I think if you're trying to create a following and grow your network, I would post probably every couple of weeks at a minimum. Once a week, I think, is a good number. More than once a week, if you've got great content, good. If you're posting more than once a week and it's not very engaging content, you might see your followers drop off. So yeah, I think sort of once a week with good content is fine. And but mix it up. Don't just do the same thing every time. Don't just do one. Don't just do videos in the same background, talking about the same things. Go outside. Do one on the weekend. Do a picture. Do a post. Do different things and get the benefit from that.
Perfect. And just quickly off the back of that, if anyone's interested, there's a good website for free called Canva, and you can create those carousel PDF documents through that. So you click it right, and it's like a picture-based one.
Yeah.
That's canva.com. Really good for that.
And we've got another one here that I know will resonate with people just starting out in a health and safety career. So in previous roles, if they're not relevant to the role that you're applying for, do you add them to your CV or avoid mentioning them until you get to the interview?
Yeah, it's a good point. Definitely add them. You don't need to put much information about them. I think the only time I would recommend people not adding roles on their CV is if it's over 20 years ago, because I think that it can be a bit irrelevant there. But you don't need to list as much information on the roles that are older than the roles that are more recent. So I recommend as your CV goes on, the amount of information you give for each position is limited, and so you get to a point where you just put your job title, the company, and the dates.
Fantastic. Did you want to wrap it up, Peter, or shall I ask one more quickly?
I'll tell you what, we'll fit one more in.
Okay, so if you're looking to make the step from advisor to manager level, but you don't have any line management experience, how do you overcome this?
So I'd recommend speaking to your organisation and your own line manager to understand how could I get that experience. It may be that you can matrix manage someone on a particular project. It may be that they will put you through management training. It may be that they recommend you to speak to someone in the mentoring capacity that you could mentor outside of the organisation that's more junior than you, just to try and help them. Be creative and think outside the box as to how you could gain that experience. Just because your current company can't offer it to you doesn't mean that you won't be able to get it. But I think you need to communicate with your line manager to try and see what they could come up with. And if you have a mentor as well, what are their ideas?
Amazing. Perfect. Well, thank you ever so much for squeezing that in. I appreciate that's literally going to be all we're going to be able to cover today. So thank you so much for joining, everyone. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Josh, with you, Alice. Thank you for doing all the Q&A. So Josh, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your time. IOSH, thank you so much for hosting this webinar. And to the attendees, thank you so much for all the questions, the comments, the chat, and everything that you've brought through. It's been fantastic speaking with you, hearing your questions. And what I would say is follow this conversation back to the IOSH Future Leaders LinkedIn group, and we can always pick up any extra questions on there. So hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, evening, wherever and whenever in the world that you're listening from. And we look forward to speaking with you again soon.